Whether you're a die-hard Transformers fan who's been there since the beginning, or you're a music fan with a passion for rock, you're not going to want to miss today's super special episode of Revolutionary Insights, because my guest truly has the touch.
Dare to dream, dare to live every moment, search for truth and find what it all means. If there's a miracle in this life, you've always known it.
Happy New Year, Revolutionaries! We're kicking off the first video of 2021 the right way, with a brand new, super special episode of Revolutionary Insights. My guest today has been a cornerstone of the Transformers franchise since 1986's Transformers the movie. His legendary songs, The Touch and Dare, have elevated the movie from underground hit to cult classic, and his music continues to be a part of the brand even today. You can also find his music in films like Kickboxer and Bloodsport with Jean-Claude Van Damme, as well as on TV shows like The Goldbergs and NBC's Chuck. Here to talk with me about a brand new project is none other than the legendary Stan Bush. So let's give Stan a revolutionary welcome. Well, first off, Stan, thank you so much for coming on board the show. This is it's an honor.
Thanks for having me.
Of course, of course. How are y'all doing? You guys are on the West Coast, correct?
Yeah, it's kind of outside of Los Angeles.
Oh, I see. Good, good. How you guys doing with all the coronavirus stuff out there? You guys doing okay?
It's, it's a little bit more crazy out here. I think there's a lot of sort of mentality of you got to lock everybody down and keep them that way, sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I understand that. It's kind of that way out here, but it's good. It's good. Well, I'm glad you're on the show. This is truly awesome. So thank you again for coming on.
Oh, my pleasure, man.
Okay, awesome. So I just kind of wanted to start off just like a little bit easy instead of just like rushing in. So, if I'm not mistaken, you've been in music since the late 1970s, if I'm not mistaken. And you've had music that's appeared in films like Bloodsport and Kickboxer with Jean-Claude Van Damme. And most famously, you've done The Touch and Dare, which a lot of Transformers fans, such as myself, remember fondly, for Transformers the movie back in 1986.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing how incredibly powerful that those songs made the film and how well they're remembered even so many years later. So given all that, what was your first sort of inspiration and the kind of catalyst that got the whole musical journey started for you?
Oh, wow. Probably back in the, in the 60s even, when the Beatles were on Ed Sullivan's show, 64,
Right.
65, I guess. My mom came and got us kids and said, "Oh, you got to see this," and it was just
Right.
jaw dropping. I think for everybody, it was like this. Everybody could tell something big was happening, and shortly after that, I started learning guitar, and so that was the
Right.
beginning. And then we let's see, I was in bands all through school, and I,
Mhm.
talent show and junior high school, that kind of stuff, and I knew Tom Petty back then. Even we're from Gainesville, Florida
Yes.
as well, and so yeah, it was pretty cool town, musical town.
Right.
Couple of the Eagles were from there too, and
Yes. I was an Eagles fan myself pretty hard. My family and I, we grew up, with 80s and 70s and 80s just blaring through the house pretty much constantly. Journey, Bon Jovi, Vince Staples, and your music in particular as well. And it was great. It was definitely a different time for music back then. Much better time, I think.
yeah, oh yeah, that's true. I mean, the 80s, one of the things I loved about that was the movies. They have like the soundtrack would be, the songs
Uh,
were a big part of of the movie, and you
yeah.
come out of the theater like humming the tune, and you-
Yes.
that kind of thing. It was a big kind of a big thing. I think that
Right.
kind of what was that? Eye of the Tiger was one of the,
Yes. Oh,
biggest,
yes.
and the Top Gun and all these other movies are like big,
Yes.
you know.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned Top Gun because Top Gun was one of the soundtracks that I absolutely binged growing up, and I think it had a lot to do with, inspiring my personal taste as like a filmmaker and a screenwriter. So yeah, there's a lot of great stuff, kind of coming out of that. And that kind of like leads into my next question.
Mhm.
When you start a journey, whether that's in film or music like yourself, you tend to have a lot of various influences that shape your style and they shape your creative ambitions, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
Like for me, I grew up on, classic sci-fi, um, giant monster movies, Transformers and stuff like that. And that shaped who I am as a filmmaker. So for you as a musician, when you were first starting out, who were you like your biggest musical influences and like how did they shape your sound going forward?
Well, later after the Beatles thing, R&B music, I loved the Motown stuff. Just great
Mm,
song, great singing. Also, Zeppelin, and then
yes.
later bands like I really liked the early Foreigner stuff. That was awesome.
Hmm.
Lou Graham,
Yes.
one of my favorite singers back in the day. He was like the best, and
Hmm.
Journey, that the same kind of stuff as you, really. But I,
Yes.
I just started sooner. 70s
Yeah.
was 70s in a lot of ways was like my 80s for maybe people of your age, that kind of thing. But
Yeah.
that's one of the best eras of music to have come up, really since late 60s on. The music's just been terrific, I
Yeah.
all that stuff was great. Crosby, Stills and Nash, and you
Oh
know,
yeah.
just amazing America, just cool stuff,
Hmm.
and you know, and
Yeah. Oh yeah.
back then they didn't have everything so like compartmentalized. You'd have like, you'd hear
Yeah.
a Zeppelin song, and then you'd hear like, you know, uh, like Bridge Over Troubled Water or something. It was
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah.
up, it's great stuff.
Yeah. It seems like music back then was a lot more, I guess you could say, organic and more natural than it is today. I
Yeah,
mean, music changes over time, but it seems to me, not, I'm not going to knock anybody that likes it, but like more music today is more electronic driven and
yeah,
it's very precise and not so much,
oh yeah,
I mentioned natural and organic. And
yeah,
that's what I love about rock, particularly from the 80s and a little bit before. Back then, they had to play instruments, they had to know how to sing, how to
yeah,
perform, how to actually know how to do all that.
yeah.
And it just seems like it's a much more organic part of music.
Yeah,
And
you're exactly right. I mean, now it's they have pitch correct, and
yeah,
anybody who's not even really a great singer maybe, but they can put it together and make it sound like really good. But everything's perfect, and it just takes away from, like you said, the organicness of
yeah,
it. Uh,
yeah,
Nobody wants perfect. I mean, everybody wants good, but I think, but it tends to make it sort of sterile. You have
yeah,
when everything's so and again, I think one of the things that happened in the 80s, the late 80s, when I don't know, some of these like bands like Def Leppard, just
yeah,
incredible records, but they'd spend like $2 million recording the record or something, and just it's
yes,
amazing. But then it I don't know, I think the only thing that people used at that time to characterize that kind of music would be corporate rock. You heard that phrase.
yeah, yeah,
That music got kind of too, well, it did get sort of formulaic. You'd have like everything was like 3 minute song or 3 to 4 minutes, and you'd have
yeah,
to get to the chorus within the first 28 seconds or something.
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. And I've kind of wondered, for me as a, filmmaker, we each have a creative process. We get inspired by different things.
Mhm.
And for you as a musician, I imagine it's sort of the same. So when it comes to, creating something new, like for your instance, music or for me, film, I tend to get inspired by music and, art and stuff like that. And for you as a musician, what inspires you and what drives your creative process when you're doing a new work, a new album or something like that?
Um, I always start off just acoustic guitar. I have a really great old Martin that sounds incredible. So you can just sit and like pick or by yourself in the bedroom or something, and just something will like, I don't know, you get like a few chords maybe and a melody that like, oh, this is cool. And then so you keep working it, and maybe you find another part that goes with that, and you say, oh, okay, that could be the chorus or something. And
Mhm.
anyway, keep like trying to change it and make it better and all that. And then eventually, for me, this is how I do it. I'll sort of come up with what I consider to be a really catchy chorus, something that a hook that you're going to remember, and
Yeah.
then a lot of times a title will emerge, from that, and then you kind of work backwards and write the lyrics. But everybody does it differently, I think. But I guess I don't know, if I'm not excited about something, I don't even
Mhm.
pursue it. It's like, okay, I'll do some work on something else, and it's hard to get inspired. But for me, that's what works. It's usually, like I say, some kind of really cool melody. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you notice, but my songs have a lot of modulations. I change keys a lot.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
To me, I try to be different. I don't want to sound,
Mhm.
like, you know, same old three chords, and it's hard.
Yes.
If anything, I write too a little bit too complex, and
Yeah. Yeah.
you have to kind of
Well,
rein it.
sometimes you gotta be a little bit more complex to kind of shake it up a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean that's what people, it's not really about writing for other people, but I just want to write something that's like cool, and
Mhm.
has a sort of and where when like I say when you do those modulations that there's like a lift, you feel, oh
Yeah.
wow, expecting that,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
surprise,
Exactly.
and probably the same with film.
Oh yes. It's funny that you mentioned, film and stuff like that because when, you're writing a script, it's weirdly a lot like writing a song because something sounds great, something sounds awesome in your head, but then when you put it onto a paper or, onto a computer, program, you read it, it's like, that doesn't fit, or, you just do something else. And it's kind of like putting together a puzzle
Yeah,
until everything fits perfect.
exactly like a
Uh,
puzzle. Yeah.
yeah, and I think that's probably a really great parallel between music and like screenwriting because, you know, you compose a song and you want to take your listener on a journey.
Mhm.
You want to take them to a musical journey, and it's the same thing with a film. And it's kind of just orchestrating that in a way that's really surprising, but also satisfying in a way, I guess
Mhm.
you could say.
Yeah, that's true. And lyrically as well, it's you want to say something that's sort of well powerful for one thing, but
Mhm.
also some of the best songs ever are the lyrics are conversational. Like Elton John. It's a little bit funny. That's
Yes.
exactly how somebody would talk normally.
Hmm.
This kind of thing. You want to try to be real and not sort of
Yeah.
contrived. Like the '80s
Yeah.
got contrived a bit. With it. You had the big well,
Yeah.
chorus. But
Yeah. Exactly.
but it was still it would usually be something that a person would actually feel, for real. Yeah.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
and with the touch, people tell me that, oh, that song was gave me sort of inspiration or whatever, or hope,
Yes.
that kind of thing. I sort of that began a series of those kinds of songs. I
Right.
like to be like, first of all, I'm an optimistic person, but I like
Yeah.
to write about positive stuff, because
Yeah.
I think ultimately we're, you know, you create your own reality, people do.
Yes.
We don't
Exactly.
realize how much power we have, It's
Yeah. It's kind of talking about the touch. I remember watching the original Transformers movie when I was 7 years old. My brother, who is much, much older than me, he sat me down one day and he said, "You know what? Hey, we're gonna watch something called Transformers the movie." I didn't even know what it was at the time, and I was just like, "This looks cool." And that scene when Optimus Prime has his final showdown with Megatron, and the touch plays. What was so striking about that scene was the placement of the touch within the scene. And, after kind of having studied film criticism and stuff like that so many years later, it's very striking to see how well that song defined that moment in the franchise and that moment in the story. So, for you as a musician, how does it feel to have your song, The Touch, so kind of synonymous with not only Transformers the brand, but also with Optimus Prime as a character. Because within the fandom, people kind of unofficially think that that is Optimus Prime's theme, and it's just kind of grown into that thing even now.
Yeah, it's a pretty cool feeling. I mean, just generally, I mean, all the Transformers conventions, and there have been many that I've
Yeah.
gone to, and people come up to me and say, really amazing stuff like, "Oh, that soundtrack to my childhood," or "That song really helped me through a tough time." That kind of stuff. It's very
Mhm.
humbling. You
Yeah.
really makes you feel good. That you've maybe done something to help touch somebody's life.
Mhm.
Pun
Yeah. Yeah, exactly, exactly. So I wanted to kind of segue into
uh
your brand new album, which is Dare to Dream. It was just released, and I personally I love it. I love every you know song on the record. And if I'm not mistaken, it's your 13th studio album since starting, correct?
14th, but
14th.
it's one of those things that's a little, hard to determine because there were some albums during the '90s. There were a couple things where I sort of re-released stuff as you
Oh,
know,
I see.
like
Okay.
a compilation or something. But yeah, there were 2 albums that I did in the '80s, one for CBS and then one for Scotty Brothers, and that's the one with the
Right.
touch. And then
Ah, I
after
see.
then
Okay.
there are 12 more after that anyway, I don't have those 2 first ones on
Mhm.
my website because I don't own the rights to them.
I see. Okay.
But yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, like I say, I'm very pleased, first of all, with the new album, Dare to Dream.
Mhm.
The reviews have been just wonderful. In fact, it was voted the 10th best album of 2020.
Oh,
Just
awesome.
week I heard that from the Europe
Yeah.
website. Uh, anyway, but yeah, it's getting really good reviews. People seem to love it, and I feel it's my best work. Some of my
Mhm.
best work because like I say, part of the thing was the COVID. Okay, it was a really
Mhm.
hard year for everybody.
Yeah.
And anyway, but at least there's kind of a silver lining because we were able to focus on that record.
Right.
Myself, my producer Holger Fath, and we
Mhm.
really worked hard to make each song special. And
Yeah.
he and but yeah, we're real happy with the album.
Awesome, awesome. My favorite tracks include, Born to Fight. That's just like a great gym song for when you want to just do something awesome. Dare to Dream, The Times of Your Life, and the 80s. And I was kind of wondering as well, with the title of the album being Dare to Dream, Dare to Go Big, I think a lot of people have kind of lost that sort of, optimistic and you can do anything kind of mentality that was kind of present back in the 80s and it kind of just waned away. But given that, what was the inspiration that drove the entire process behind the album? Like, did you just like wake up and like, I want to do a very motivating album today? Or like, what was the story behind it?
Oh, well, I don't know, just sort of I always feel sort of this inner drive to keep going and keep
Mhm.
writing. Uh, like the '80s, you mentioned the '80s song. That was the first song for the new album. It was
Oh,
actually a year
really?
and a half ago. We released it as a single in the summer of 2019 and did a music video. And that's my son.
Yes.
Right, my son is playing a young me. So anyway,
Yeah.
he's the good looking one. But
Yeah.
anyway, it was a real cool song, and it was kind of like a nostalgia thing where you look back on your childhood, and music's like a time
Mhm.
machine. It takes you back, and it's a
Yes.
cool sort of feeling, the feeling of the '80s, and we were talking about the songs from that era, just awesome. And
Oh,
anyway, so then there were a couple more towards the latter part of the 2019 year, but the bulk of the album was written and recorded like during the pandemic, actually.
oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah,
Well, it's awesome.
it's like what else are you going to do, right? So
Yeah.
I've
And it,
actually read other people have had the same kind of thing. There should be a lot of good stuff coming out
yeah,
from a lot of
for
bands
sure.
and all.
For sure. I think the pandemic, in a way, was kind of a blessing in disguise because it kind of crowded out a lot of the noise and distractions for a
Mhm.
lot of people and just kind of recentered people on what was important and what was worth doing.
That's true.
and a lot of distractions for creative people like ourselves to just sit down and create something without all the extra noise.
Yeah, yeah.
So, um, personally, the song "Dare to Dream" that is one of my favorites off the album, and it's very powerful. And the idea of dreaming big,
Thank you.
going for your full potential, and with an optimistic outlook, like anything is possible for the
Mhm.
future. I was listening to the song one day, and it just kind of hit me that when the 90s hit, there was a shift within music. The 80s had a more optimistic outlook, like the music you do. And once the 90s hit, it seemed to switch from a more optimistic view to a more cynical and kind of nihilistic one.
Yeah.
So, from a musical standpoint, what do you think kind of caused that shift?
That's a great question, because you're right. There was a lot of angst in the '90s, early
Mhm.
'90s when the grunge thing came out. It seemed like, well, not only the sort of hip hop stuff that
Mhm.
always had that sort of element, but the music, the lyrics, and everything else. There's just people are angry or something, and it's like,
Yeah.
yeah, and I don't know. It's just a trend, I guess. Things have a
Mhm.
way of going and coming around again. But I don't know. To me, I just think it's better to be positive and I
Yeah.
I was blessed, like I say, growing up in a close family and lots
Mhm.
of great support from my parents and whatnot. And I had this great life, and it's just I don't know. I came out to LA, like I said, did one album with a band, and then that band broke up, and then I went solo,
Yes.
and then after that, it just things kept kind of going from there. I started doing
Mhm.
movies and commercials. I was like the voice for Toyota
Right.
and Cruise
Right. Yes, I remember that.
Later one in NBC.
The band that you had at the beginning, was that Barrage, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
Yeah, well, the earlier band that it came out here, they were called Boulder, and we were signed to
Okay.
Elektra Records. That was in '79. So
Oh
that
wow. Yeah.
that album kind of came and went. It was one of
Yeah.
those things. Went plywood, right?
Yeah. Yeah. But hey, you got to get your start somewhere,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, that's the thing you learn, and it was a process. I mean, I learned later on. Like I say, the Barrage album was really when, like, the producer he started like hooking me up with various writers, and including Lenny Macaluso, who I wrote The Touch
Yeah.
with, and
Oh
Lenny and I are
yes.
still writing together. In fact, we wrote Born to Fight, the one for the
There
Netflix.
you go.
That was Netflix reached out to me just before. Really, the album was like we had one more song to do on the Dare to Dream album, and Netflix, reached out and asked me to write a song about fighting. It was to promote their two most popular anime shows.
Yes.
Born to Fight was for Baki and
Yeah.
King Ashura. So
Yeah.
anyway, came up with Born to Fight, recorded it, and they loved it. Did a music video with me and with footage
Mhm.
from the shows, and it was very cool. So
Yes. I saw the Born to Fight music video when it dropped the day of, and it was just not only a really fun video, but it was one of those videos that pumps you up really and just kind of motivates you to take things on in a whole different direction. It's a great video.
oh, thank you. That was pretty funny because never thought of myself as a tough guy or anything like that. No, but my wife she's into fitness, so she was like training me, and she teaches
Right.
kickboxing. So she was showing me some of the fight moves and whatnot, and
Yeah.
it was kind of
Wow.
almost tongue in cheek, but you can tell in the video the guy's like serious.
Yeah, exactly.
You
Well, I think that was part of the charm of it, honestly, though.
yeah, yeah. That's the thing. You
So,
can't take
sorry.
yourself too seriously, I think.
Yeah, I think a lot of people do just that, a little bit too serious. But
Yeah.
um, the times of your life, that song was very thought provoking for me. It really resonated with me as well, and it got me thinking about how you spend your time. The theme of living your life to the fullest,
Mhm.
and that sort of thing, and enjoying every moment. It's kind of a counter message to the modern world where we have, phones and tablets and all kinds of stuff to distract us.
Yeah,
We live more in the digital world than the real one.
that's
And
true.
it's definitely a sort of wake up call, because it's just
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
the technology isn't always going to be there, but the real world is, your friends, your family, all the great precious moments.
Heck,
It's
just
always there.
walk outside, look up at the tree or a tree or something, or the
Yeah.
sky. I mean, it's like there's a whole world out there. It just seems like, and
Yes.
you're exactly right. A lot of people, we spend our time staring at a screen or, you know, whatever people do.
Yes.
But I think it is important to sort of look at what you're doing, where you are in your life. And I mean, I don't know, to me, I thank you, by the way. That's one of my favorite songs as well.
Yes, it was great. It's like I said, it was thought provoking, but I was going to ask you about it. It's a consistent element of your music now, the positive sort of go for it, uplifting element. And I know you're kind of a more optimistic person naturally, but as far as music goes, was that kind of a natural development over time, or was that just like a hey, I'm going to do this sort of conscious decision?
Well, again, I just started off messing with the chord thing, and then it just seemed like I say, lyrics just sort of come from nowhere a lot of times,
Mhm.
especially like a concept for a song, the title, uh, about thinking about your life and remembering not oh, or remembering each moment, trying to savor and live life to the fullest, that kind of thing.
Mhm.
All of us get caught in stuff, and it's just, that before you know it, another week has passed and you think, oh man, and it's like,
Mhm.
none of us is getting younger, all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
It's not meant to be a bummer, but rather just live to the fullest, and be, as the army used to say, be all you can be.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's kind of funny. One thing I've kind of noticed in today's world is that people are just kind of content with what is. They're just content with being how they are instead of like reaching for more, reaching for their fullest potential. And it's kind of sad, but at the same time, it's also inspiring because it's just like, you know what? I want to be all I can be, and in every way. So that's always a great sort of message to put out to the world, especially in a world that doesn't really have kind of a place for that kind of music and messaging anymore. But yet people are still hungry for that, you know?
I think, yeah, I think it's important to stop and think, about where things are going. And the world's crazy. I mean, it's always been crazy, and it seems crazier now than ever. So,
Yeah, yeah,
right?
exactly. So I wanted to kind of switch gears just a little bit
Okay.
and talk a little bit of Transformers. Now, with the Touch having cameoed in the Bumblebee movie
Hmm.
in 2018, and we are now going to have another live action Transformers reboot, which I think is going to be the second one, if I'm not mistaken, within the next few years. That kind of brings me to the question of your music and the franchise. If you were offered the chance, would you like to see your music in the live action universe again? And if you would you like to maybe revamp a classic like maybe The Touch or Dare, or maybe sort of do something wholly original like Till All Are One from the War for Cybertron games?
Probably the latter. I mean, it's great. Like you said, Bumblebee movie used a little clip of the touch and a cameo type of thing, and that was very cool the way they used it. And but yeah, no, I hadn't heard that about there being a new live action, but that's awesome. But yeah, I'd love to be involved. I um, feel like the brand has been good to me over the years.
Mhm.
I've had my songs in a number of the Transformers games, as well as
Yes.
on television and different things. They use the touch on Goldberg's and all these other things.
Yes.
It's
And I'm sorry,
and
go ahead.
Silver One would be great too as well.
Mhm.
That was used in War for Cybertron, I believe it was game.
Yes, I think it was the first game, yes.
Yeah,
Or the second one, whichever. But yeah, and the Touch has also cameoed in other shows, like you said, the Goldbergs, but also NBC's Chuck, like a
Chuck,
while
right?
back.
Yeah.
Yes, it was very funny. I actually started watching the show on Netflix because I hadn't heard of it until then. It quickly became my favorite show within just a few episodes. But I think it's in the second season. when the touch starts playing a specific scene, I was like, oh my goodness, this is amazing. I had no idea that was coming. So it just really showed you, just how powerful and kind of, I guess, iconic that song has become. But it's incredible, honestly. So speaking of Transformers, back in 2014, if I'm not mistaken, you were inducted into the Transformers Hall of Fame,
Hmm.
and you were the first human to be inducted in there. And you've been a cornerstone of the franchise for such a long time, and it's pretty fitting that you made it in there. So, how did that whole thing come about? Did they just kind of reach out to you, or what was the story behind it?
I didn't know ahead of time, honestly. I They had BotCon, here in Pasadena, LA, in Los Angeles here,
Mhm.
and the plan was a lot of the people from the convention were bussed over to Universal Studios,
Right.
which is not too far away, 5 miles maybe,
Mhm.
and we did a concert that evening at in the park, Universal Studios.
Yeah.
Anyway, they came and got me about, I don't know, maybe half an hour before the band was supposed to go on stage, and they said, "Oh, we need you to come over here to this." It was like one of these TV studio kind of things with
Yeah.
a studio audience, right? And I came in. They brought me over there, and they said, "Oh, here, sit here." There was a chair up near the stage, and so I sat down. And they started talking about the franchise and how the films, and they said, and one of the most important parts is the music. And I was like, oh crap.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they brought me up there and inducted me rather.
Yeah.
And anyway, it was very cool. I was completely surprised. I had no clue that was going to happen. And
Hmm.
of course, I told them, you got the touch, and everybody cheered.
Yeah. Yeah. I can
So
imagine.
it
Talk
was
about.
quite
I'm
an
sorry.
honor.
No, I'm
Sorry.
sorry. Go ahead. I kind of
I was
interrupted.
just saying it was quite an honor. So
Oh yes, I can imagine. It's kind of like major putting you on the spot, like
yeah,
right out of the blue.
yeah.
That's cool. That's cool. Now at the time, I've heard the story that when the touch was put into the original movie, you didn't know about it until like I think it was your agent said, "Hey, they put the touch in the movie." Like,
Yeah,
did you sign off
the
on that?
record label was one that told me. Yeah, they said, yeah, and we had originally written the song with the Stallone movie Cobra in mind, and yeah,
Yes.
they came and said, oh, we got the song in the Transformers. It's an animated movie about robots, and I'm like, what? But
Yeah.
little did we know then that it was going to be this big phenomenon.
Mhm. Yeah, Cobra, I've seen the movie, gosh, long time ago, but it's amazing to me that it was written with a Stallone film in mind because I'm sure to a lot of people you don't normally associate the touch and Stallone, of course, but it's still really cool because I think at the time, I could be mistaken, Transformers was still kind of like a kids, slightly underground thing, still popular but still underground. But to see what it's evolved or transformed into, if you will, has just been incredible. And I imagine it must feel amazing to be part of such a brand that has become a global phenomenon over the years.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like I said, it sort of took on a life of its own. It's
Yes.
funny because one of the other films, of course, was Boogie Nights, and
Mark
like
Wahlberg, yes.
about 4 years ago, Wahlberg and I were both at this Transformers convention, and back in it's called HasCon,
Yes.
by Hasbro, put on by Hasbro Toys. Anyway, he comes off. He had just done a panel, so he was coming off back and walking backstage, and I said, "You got the touch." And he turned around and saw me and said, "How did I do?" And I said, "It was great." Anyway, he comes
Yeah.
over a couple minutes later with his phone, and we start singing the touch together, like a couple of drunk guys. It
Right.
was really
Oh
funny.
man.
He
That would have been great to see, honestly.
he posted it on his Facebook. I think you can still Google it and see it.
Oh
But
yeah. Oh yeah. That I'll definitely have to do that once I'm done. But yeah, I was just kind of wondering also. It might be a little bit early since Dare to Dream was just released, but I think it'd be a kind of a good thought exercise. And I was wondering, new music, is I don't know your plans, but music is, it's something that never stops. So I was thinking in the future, when you do new music, it would be really cool to see collaboration between you and maybe some other musicians. And that kind of sparked the idea, if you could collaborate on a dream project with pretty much any musician, you know, um, who would it be and why?
Well, one of my all-time favorite artists is Don Henley. I mean, he's like amazing songwriter.
Yes.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I mean, I just love his stuff. Heart of the Matter is one of my all-time favorite songs, and
Oh yeah,
I
Don
was gonna,
Henley.
yeah, I was gonna say that a few minutes ago because you asked me about the songwriting process and
Mhm.
how, okay, right, whether to write something complicated or not, and what's going to appeal to the most people. And I was gonna say this, but it seems like, okay, not all of us really. Well, I don't know. It seems like universally recognized a song like "Heart of the Matter" is a great
Mhm.
song, right? And
Yes.
but how does everybody know that if some people can't sort of appreciate music more than somebody else, maybe, or
Mhm.
whatever? You know what I'm saying? It's like,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of people don't even know if the singer's in tune, but
Mhm.
they'll still say, "Oh man, that song is great." It's like a universal sort of, and that I think that's
Mhm.
what you try to go for, is writing stuff. And again, like I don't know, you were talking about songwriting, the process, and lyrics are the hardest thing. And I had read
Yeah.
that he really works long and hard. He'll spend months on a lyric,
Yeah.
and so that's important, to really get it right, because
Mhm.
it's easy to just give up and say, "Oh, that's good enough." It's like,
Mhm.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
right?
It's actually funny that you mentioned that, with just putting out something that's good enough. For me, being a film, I'm sure as you as a musician, it is always that element of just being a perfectionist and kind of fighting that perfectionist
Yeah,
um, aspect of yourself. Like for me, when I write, a script or something like that, it's almost always difficult to come up with a final draft because
yeah,
you're endlessly critical of yourself,
that's right. Yeah,
and
I myself nuts that way. I really
yeah.
do. I'm very, very intent on singing everything in tune, and I really work to get, you know, as good as possible. And I don't use a lot of like pitch correcting and stuff because, I
Hmm.
mean, but like you said, think about the guys back in the day, before multi-track
Yes.
recording. Like, guys like Nat King Cole, he'd have to walk in front of an orchestra, and they'd take the whole thing live. And Sonata,
Yes.
all those guys, that was the real deal. Those guys were,
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
now people punch
mhm,
together a vocal and use, oh, this piece and that piece, and
mhm.
you know
Yeah, and it's also, you mentioned lyric writing. You want, to sound the best and to flow right. It's kind of the same with writing dialogue. It's weird. Once you put something on a page or, a lyric, you sing it, you instantly can tell if it's going to work or not.
Mhm.
And it's kind of coming to that middle ground between, I need this to be great and I don't want to just put something out that's good enough, and realizing there's not going to be a perfect anything, but still
Yeah,
aiming toward that. So
yeah,
it's a
yeah,
process.
exactly. And how do you know whether something's going to work? I think that's the key to the whole thing. You can't always get there, but you know it when it's working and when it's great.
Yes.
That's the whole point. I think is, it's like I wrote with some of the best guys in the world. Jonathan Cain from Journey, I wrote songs with him.
Yes.
Jim Vallance, who wrote all the Brian Adams stuff, and a lot of
Hmm.
Aerosmith too. Guys, those two guys, for instance, are just incredible. They're very talented, first of all. But the big thing is the work ethic. We'd work 12, 14-hour days in the studio
Yes.
recording. When I was working with each of them, I flew to,
Hmm.
San Francisco and worked with Jonathan Cain, and up to
Hmm.
Vancouver, to work with Valance. And I just wanted to say that, it's like the work
Hmm.
ethic. I think a lot of people aren't willing to put in the effort, time to make something that's truly great. And
Hmm.
you have to.
Yeah, I think, it's funny you mentioned Journey because growing up and even now, Journey was still one of my favorite bands. And what was so striking was kind of the songwriting skills of Jonathan Cain that you mentioned, and also the
Yeah.
legendary vocals of Steve Perry and how those two
Yep.
meshed well together. And that, hearing that you worked with them, that must have been an experience, or Jonathan,
Yes.
I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it
So,
really opened my eyes, a lot because, here's this guy, so multi-platinum,
Yeah.
songwriter. Just he wrote like "Faithfully" and all these songs. It's like
Yes.
just I don't know. It's very very cool to have worked with people like that. I was even tried out to be the singer of Foreigner when Foreigner, yeah, when they broke up, and
Hmm.
that was like coming back from a tour in Germany, and they flew me to New York and put me up in a hotel on Central Park, and
Hmm.
it was very cool. I hadn't really been to New York City before, so that was a trip. But
Yeah. Wow.
I didn't
Sounds like
get
a very good experience.
yeah, but that's another guy that I really think highly of is well the band, the Foreigner, and
Hmm.
yeah,
Oh yeah, my mom's a huge Foreigner fan too, so she's uh she's definitely her and my dad the ones that got me into all this. But yeah, so um before we wrap up, I just for my viewers, I just wanted to kind of ask you if there was anything that you wanted to say for anybody that's looking to kind of get into music and now especially, and if
don't do
there's like a message you'd like to give them.
don't do it. No, I'm kidding. No, it's a whole different world. I mean, like I say, the internet has been a blessing and a curse. For one thing, it's sort of, it makes it where everybody can get their music out there. But
Mhm.
the downside of that, of course, is it's hard to get noticed, hard to get started. I have
Yes.
like a track record from years ago. And the other thing too is there's a lot of stuff that's maybe not up to snuff, and so you
Hmm.
got to try to work to be, as good as possible and have it's really, it boils down to the songs, but that's really the
Yes.
most important thing of all is the songs. And, you know,
Hmm.
um, but yeah, I think, you know, something a guy, a singer, one of the great singers actually in LA, told me years ago. He said, don't ever give up. So,
Yes.
yeah,
Perseverance is one of the golden rules, I guess, when it comes to this kind of field.
right. Yeah.
Yes. So, but again, Stan, thank you so much for coming on board the show. It's been an absolute blast to talk to you.
For me
It
too.
really has. It has
Great.
been an honor.
You brought
Um,
out that I wouldn't normally get in an interview situation, so
mhm.
appreciate that.
Of
That's
course. Thank you.
absolutely, if somebody wants to find out what's happening, I have something very big that's coming probably next week, and it involves trans.
Oh.
And
Oh. Yes.
so
Okay.
go to stanbush.com and see what's going
Yes.
on. But
Definitely. And for everybody that's viewing, all my Revolutionary fans, you can pick up Stan's Dare to Dream both on his website, iTunes, Google Play, and wherever you can find music. Plus, you can also stream it on Spotify. So be sure to go give not only Dare to Dream, but every one of his previous albums a look. Believe me, you guys will not just be disappointed. It will be awesome. Again, Stan, thank you so much for coming on the show. It was an honor, and it's been great talking to you.
thanks for having me. You
Of
take
course,
care.
Stan. You have
All
a good one, and take care.
right, you too. Bye.
All right,
Bye.
thank you. Bye bye. If you enjoyed this episode of Revolutionary Insights, then don't forget to go down below and click the like button. And if you want to level up your skills as a filmmaker, then consider going down below, clicking the subscribe button, and clicking that little bell icon so that way you have notifications on whenever I post a new video. Share your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, Revolutionaries, stay awesome, and I'll see you guys in the next video.